absolutely disgusting.
Let's have the other side to this. Iran, we now know, was behind the October the 7th attack. Iran told Hamas to do it. So that's not exactly a pro-Iranian point. The Iranians, Mike, you know this, for many years, for decades, advised our opponents in Iraq and Afghanistan on the technology for improvised explosive devices, for IEDs. Hundreds of British soldiers were killed.
What is up, everybody? Harry here. This is a UK panel discussion covering the Iran crisis, UK military capability, and the legality of potential strikes, featuring a former defense minister and a former British Army officer who served in Afghanistan. One specific claim jumps out, that the Iranian regime has murdered 20,000, some say 30,000, inches of its own protesters since Christmas. I've checked this against human rights organizations' actual documented figures, and it's a substantial overstatement of a real and serious situation. Let's get into what actually holds up here, including the UK's naval capability claims. Get subscribed if that's useful to you.
Military solution that opens up the Straits of Hormuz. What we're talking about is Iran, which has hundreds of miles of coastline along there, holding at risk civilian shipping, which has no armaments. It's doing that through a variety of methods like drones, subsurface drones, missiles, fast boats, rubber dinghies, you name it, they've got it. And there is no, short of ground troops, which we're not going to do, there's no military solution to that problem.
I disagree.
You can't commit. Well, Mark, let's talk about your intelligence then about the destroyer as well, because I sit on the Defence Select Committee. There wasn't a destroyer, so I'm very surprised to hear that the Navy was.
The question is, why not?
Because the fleet is only 6 destroyers and 3 of them are in deep maintenance. So the big story here actually is there is no UK military capability. The Prime Minister doesn't have options. And while we're on minesweepers, Mark, the reason we don't have any of those is because the Tories cut them by 50% when they were in government. So across the board, UK military capability is cut to the bone, and the Prime Minister does not have options when it comes to things like this. And the story that we've had with Iran, should we be with America or against America, it's actually kind of irrelevant, because we are not able to bring assets to bear on the problem.
I have to say that I do not believe that the UK should be involved in an illegal war, full stop.
I agree.
And whether we have capabilities or not, it's an illegal war.
I totally agree.
We agree.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we're miles apart on the political spectrum, right? Sure. But this is an illegal war.
It's an illegal war.
It's a war where there's no clear strategic end state. So this idea that you're going to kind of throw assets at it, bomb some stuff. I mean, the glorification that the Americans, these memes and the videos glorifying in violence, like I've fought in wars. That's disgusting. You don't glorify the death and destruction of your enemies.
Wait a minute.
Absolutely disgusting.
Let's have the other side to this. Iran, we now know, was behind the October the 7th attack. Iran told Hamas to do it. So that's not exactly a pro-Iranian point. The Iranians, Mike, you know this, for many years, for decades, advised our opponents in Iraq and Afghanistan on the technology for improvised explosive devices, for IEDs. Hundreds of British soldiers were killed. Thousands were maimed in those 2 theatres of operations with the use of Iranian-supplied technology. These are not Boy Scouts. These are murdering mullahs, and you will never have long-term peace in the Middle East while the mullahs control Iran. These are some inconvenient truths.
Well, let me respond to these truths.
Well, hang on. I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished. But they are also, I'm afraid, true. And it's the same regime that has murdered 20,000 Iranian civilians since Christmas. Some people say 30,000. For having the temerity to protest on the streets that they wanted to live in a free country. So there's another side to this, so you can rant all you want about Donald Trump. I'd like to hear the Liberal Democrats criticise the mullahs.
Let me listen. I was one of those soldiers in Afghanistan who was being shot at by militias that were sponsored by Iran. So don't lecture me on that.
I'm not lecturing you. I'm just pointing out the facts.
And this is not about is the Iranian regime a despicable regime. Obviously, it is.
So what are we going to do about it?
Nobody's disputing that. Mark, as a former minister, I would expect you to know better that when there's problems, you don't always do something about them, because sometimes the choices are deeply unpalatable. Just because there's a problem doesn't mean you have to deal with it.
So we let them carry on murdering 20,000 of their own people,
do you know
and we go tut-tut.
Do you know what? It's not about saying tut-tut. The outcome of this is going to be, mark my words, the Americans are desperately looking for an off-ramp. Okay, there is no solution. The chief, the supreme leader's son, has now taken over and gone to ground.
Well,
right?
we think so.
The Iranian regime does not look very close
we don't know whether he's alive or dead. Yeah.
Right, and so the Americans have realised there's no military solution. They can't bomb the Iranian regime, and if they do, that's a terrible, terrible idea, because there's 600 kilograms of enriched uranium dispersed around Iran that would fall into regional warlord militias' hands. Right. So there's no military solution for the Americans.
Tell that to someone who lives in Israel.
The Iranians,
who've been under Iranian missile fire for years.
Mark, I'm not disputing any of those points. The thing I'm disputing is the solution to those things to launch an illegal war that, in the end, the Americans have to pull back from?
I don't believe it was illegal.
But, well,
we have to differ.
We'll differ, but I'm not Lord Hermer. I'm not a human rights
Iran in the way they've tried to flatten Gaza. You just can't. That's not realistic. I mean, and it was an illegal war.
Let's just finish off this section, because I mean, you've in many people's views rightly said, well, we should be doing something on the Strait of Hormuz. But the fact is, as Mike has explained, we haven't got the wherewithal to do that, and that is because our Navy has been decimated by cuts under a government that you were once a defence minister.
Well, we still got a number of mine hunters. We still had a number of mine hunters in theatre when we left government. Labour, as I said, because they have brought in £2.6 billion of in-year savings, because the Treasury have forced them upon them, brought the last one of those home in January. Do we still have a mine hunting capability? Yes. We haven't decided to deploy it yet. I'm not as defeatist as Mike.
The Iranians would sink our mine hunter with a drone or a missile, Mark. Come on.
No,
one-dimensional about
sorry.
It's a threat coming from multiple vectors. You've got to be able to
we can't have three people speaking at once in more than about 5 seconds.
Look.
So should we go to a break? Because we're coming back to an allied question in just a moment.
Yeah. Watch the specific casualty figures cited for Iran's crackdown on its own protesters, because it's a significant overstatement of an already serious, well-documented situation. The claim made is that the regime has murdered 20,000, some people say 30,000 inches of its own civilians. The most rigorous independent tracking from Iran Human Rights, a Norway-based organization that names and verifies individual victims, documented 551 confirmed protester deaths, including 68 children, across the full year following the 2022 crackdown that began with Mahsa Amini's death in custody. Human Rights Watch and United Nations investigators reported figures in the low hundreds during the most intense period of unrest, with an independent UN fact-finding mission separately confirming Amini's own death was unlawful and caused by physical violence in custody. None of these credible, independently verified sources come anywhere near 20,000 or 30,000, figures roughly 40 to 50 times higher than the most careful documented count. That gap matters because Iran's human rights record during that crackdown is genuinely severe and well documented on its own terms. Hundreds of verified deaths, thousands detained, is a real atrocity that doesn't need to be inflated by a factor of 50 to be worth taking seriously, and doing so risks making an accurate underlying concern easier to dismiss once checked against the record. The claim about UK Royal Navy destroyer availability is worth confirming. as broadly accurate. The UK operates a fleet of 6 Type 45 destroyers, and persistent, well-documented reliability and power system issues with that class have repeatedly limited how many are actually available for deployment at any given time, a problem reported on by defense journalists and parliamentary committees for years. The claim about historical cuts to mine countermeasures in vessels is directionally consistent with real, publicly reported reductions to that part of the fleet under recent governments, though the precise 50% figure would benefit from direct sourcing against Ministry of Defense records to confirm exactly. The claim that Iran told Hamas to carry out the October 7th attack specifically is a stronger and more precise claim than what's typically been confirmed by public intelligence assessments. Iran's extensive, long-documented financial, military, and training support for Hamas over many years is well established and not seriously disputed. Direct operational command specifically ordering that particular attack is a separate and more specific claim that hasn't been publicly confirmed with that level of certainty by major intelligence services, even where Iranian complicity in supporting Hamas broadly is accepted. The claim about Iranian-supplied technology contributing to British military casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan is well documented and accurate. UK and US authorities in multiple official inquiries confirmed Iranian-linked explosively formed penetrator technology was used against coalition forces during that period. It's worth naming the pattern across this exchange separate from any individual claim. Several of the specific numbers here, the protester death toll, the mine countermeasures cuts, sit in the same category. Real, serious underlying issues described with a specific figure that turns out to be inflated or unverified once checked. That's worth flagging as its own habit, worth watching for in any political discussion, regardless of topic. A true and troubling underlying situation doesn't need an exaggerated number attached to it, and checking the specific figure separately from the broader point is usually the fastest way to tell whether an argument is standing on solid ground or borrowed urgency. If breakdowns like this are useful to you, get subscribed to Harry Unfiltered, and I'll keep checking the specifics as carefully as this deserves, one panel at a time.